Hi, here's Alex from BC Designer, and in this video I would like to discuss one interesting question that people often ask us is what is the difference between performance and progress? Before we go into this topic, before showing you something in spreadsheet software, I want to mention that we discussed this question in detail in the article about calculation of the KPIs and scorecards that I will share in the description for this video. And we also have these two columns in BC Designer. So that's why people ask us this question, why do we need these two different values? Yeah, and in first video that actually we did about KPI normalization, metric normalization, we discussed that these values for the metrics that we had there, they had their own measure units, and for that reason, they were not comparable. We were not able to put them on the same scorecard. And before doing this, before comparing these metrics, before being able to calculate the scorecard using these metrics, we normalized them. We used some scale and we calculated the performance for them. So that's what we have discussed, I think, in the first video. Why cannot we continue with just performance value? Why do we need some progress value? Actually, let's track it with some example. Imagine that you start some project, you have some prototype, and you're measuring the Net Promoter Score or customer satisfaction, whatever, and you measure it in January, and it's a kind of low, 12%, and you measure it in February, it's getting up, and so on and so forth. So on a certain level, you get to, let's say, 85. And then you have some improvement initiative in mind. Let's say your team came up with an idea to change something inside your business that would help you to improve the value of this indicator even more. For example, to improve it from 85 to 90%. Yeah, and if we're looking on this scorecard now, on this indicator now, this improvement does not feel like important ones. It's obvious we're measuring this indicator on this scale, which is from 0 to 100, and this is quite a big scale, and smaller changes, like 5% changes, we see these changes here in the performance, but it's not that obvious, and sometimes we just don't feel how important it is to change, for example, in this case, from 85 to 90. So how to change the situation, how to make that calculation more focused on this specific improvement initiative. So we need to define two additional fields. Yeah, and another aspect actually that I forgot to mention, you will never be able to reach with your Net Promoter Score the 100% value. So typically Net Promoter Score is never 100% because there are always people who, for some reason, are not able to use your product and won't recommend it to their friends, of course. Yeah, so that's the point. So this indicator will never be 100%, and that's kind of frustrating as well, because you did your best, you achieved the target, but still the performance is not 100%. So it's a kind of psychological challenge that we pretend to solve here, but it's really important. So let's solve it. How to solve it? Again, in the first video, we're talking about normalization, how to convert these values into the performance. Yeah, we discussed different formulas. This is formula for maximization. Here for response time, we have formula for minimization. So We need to use the same formula, so I will just copy it here. But in this case, we will use a different scale. So before we were using the scale from 0 to 100. Now the scale will be different. For example, we can use a scale from 85 to 90. Yeah? And what does it give to us? It gives us an opportunity to measure this value. Let me change the formula. Focus the formula on the right cell. So it should be not on D8, but on D5. Checking, yeah. So now with this scale from baseline to target, we actually explain to our team what we expect from them. We don't expect this indicator to get to 100%. We expect it to get to 90%. If we get to 90%, we will reach 100% performance. So compare the 100% progress. Compare, here you have the progress is 100% because it's measured on this scale, and the performance is just 90% because it's measured on this scale. Now, what happens if the performance, if the current value of this indicator will be decreased to, let's say, 87? The progress is relatively low, so we know that we need to improve more. Still, the performance is in the green zone, so the performance in this case won't tell us a story about this indicator. The progress will tell the story about this indicator. So if I put here 85%, again, the performance is in the green zone and everything looks fine, but it's not the case because we agreed that our goal in the context of this metric is to get from current baseline to the target. And on this scale, from baseline to target, we have not achieved any progress yet. Yeah, so increasing it will get us finally to the desired 100% progress. So these are the psychological challenges that we solve by implementing an additional measurement scale for the indicator. Again, note for the users of BC Designer software. Here I have a BC Designer Online. Here, these two calculations are done automatically. So let's use the same Net Promoter Score example. I put here my current value, and here I have my baseline and target. Yeah, if I want to have two different scales, I need to uncheck this simple input mode, and I need to introduce these two different scales. For example, I can put here 85 for baseline and 90 for target. Yeah, and that's what will happen. Let's put here 98. The software shows me one performance value, which is 89, and it shows me one progress value, which is different because it is measured on a different scale. Again, users of BC Designer Online or BC Designer Pro can do it in their copies. If you don't have a license, no problem. We have a BC Designer Lite, the freeware version of BC Designer, where you can play with these performance and progress settings as well. As you can see, this software is for Windows, and you have there some data tab. You have there some the same fields to introduce the baseline, the target, the same simple mode checkbox. So this is a freeware tool that you can use. Well, of course, users of BC Designer Online or BC Designer Pro have some benefits, like possibility to use a strategy map, possibility to visualize all this. But again, this video is not to promote BC Designer, at least not to promote it directly. So my main challenge, and I believe it was completed, to explain you the difference between the performance and progress and show how to do it mathematically on your scorecard. Yeah, and one important note that the formula for the performance and for the progress are always the same. Yeah, so we have reused this formula for Net Promoter Score, and for response time, the formula is different. Yeah, because it's indicator that is focused on the minimization of the value, and then for the response time or similar indicators, you will need to use their own formula. So, for example, here in response time, I have this formula as well. And in the same way, I can define here my baseline and my target to reflect this idea. And so that the software would calculate for me two different values, the performance and the progress. That's all for today. I hope this explanation about the difference between the performance and the progress was helpful.